Thank you very much. Let's move on to Rainer, I think.
Okay. Rainer Familensky. I represent the private sector here, working for a multinational company. I want to build on what basically JJ says. If we look into the private sector, the food and feed chain is a very complex entity with diverse interests, and some of these interests contradict each other. I mean, the input companies have a very different interest, other customers than the farmers have, and so have the processors than the retailers. And the first step is, as JJ said, if I were able to start an initiative and bring representatives from these three areas together, a set number, visionaries, not the top of those companies, but the thinkers and movers of those companies. And I would put them in a cottage in Crete or an island without electricity, just water, and say, you trash this out with a joint initiative and come back after 5 days, and then communication starts. This is before communication. Now, what you need to understand is also what JJ already mentioned, is you need to be clear what are your differences, what are your prejudices about each other. Clearly, the private sector has short-term interests. Sometimes people say our disease is immediacy. Yes, that is true, because if you need to make money every year to pay your employees and your shareholders, you need to do that. If we talk to people in the public sector, they have a much more long-term perspective. They think very differently, and unless you don't understand that, and don't put a judgment on these, because all of those interests have their place, you will not find common solutions. I believe that all of the three sectors have this interest. The group which will come back from the mountain probably needs a clear purpose, it needs a clear vision, so it needs to inspire something to make a change that goes beyond the direct goal and objective. And once that is set up and is accepted and trust has been built, a lot of that is about trust. This is why I would put them on that mountain, so they have the time to build that trust. Then changes can happen. But in the past, I think the interactions were too sporadic. Individual parties were not moving away from their own very focused partial interests. Joint interests were not properly identified and pursued, and that probably was the biggest problem. Then when it comes to communication, and Klaus mentioned that, I think, and I'm talking about ourselves, we did a pretty bad job. We were too technical, we were too introverted, we didn't communicate with relevance, and I'm sure that other panelists can say better about that. We weren't passionate, we weren't emotional, and we didn't tell relevant stories about what we did. And that needs to change if we increase the awareness. And with this I want to stop, because I know that my co-panelists have more to say here.
Okay, thanks. Mike, I think you were going to pick it up.
Yes, thank you very much, Warren. My name is Michael Daka. I come from Zambia. I've had 3 lives, media lives. I started off as an active journalist, writing stories and all that. Then I became a media trainer. But 8 years ago, I quit my job, sold my family house, and moved 600 kilometers into the deep countryside, where I set up a radio station. And and I've been doing that since then. The radio station is an experiment. On one side, because it's privately owned, it's a commercial radio station, so it needs to make a bit of money. But on the other, because of where it's located, it has a serious public service mission, addressing the needs of the community. There are three roles, I think. One, of course, is to provide information to the people. The other, even more important, is giving voice. Previously, people in that area, Eastern Zambia, listened to information coming from Lusaka. Now, they are able to speak about their own issues using that way. And the third, of course, is that it has provided a platform for people who previously would not be able to engage in public dialogue. Let me first say that when I confirmed I was coming, I went to look at the budget of the country, this year's budget, to see how much money was allocated to agriculture, health, and nutrition. And I was actually surprised because I found that health had received more than agriculture. In Zambia, yes. And, health received about 6.5% of the total budget. Agriculture, 4.2%. When I was looking for nutrition, I almost did not find it anywhere in the budget because it's less than 1%, And the reality of it shocked me because for me, it would have been obviously agricultural first, so that people are well fed, and then so that they are stronger to withstand all the problems of malaria, for instance. I mean, if you are hungry and you get bitten by a mosquito, you have very little chance. But as I was thinking about the question that Warren sent to us, I first looked at what currently our radio station is doing. This area is an agricultural area because villagers depend on peasant farming for their food, but now they also produce cash crops. So very early on, when we went to the people to ask what kind of programming they thought our radio station should, in fact, we were asking whether they needed a radio station. And then we looked at kind of programming they were getting and programming they were not getting, which they wanted. One of the things they told us was program on agriculture, information on agriculture. So we introduced a program that looks at what the peasant farmer wants at any time of the year. Okay, so any time of the year, whatever the peasant farmer is doing, what kind of information does he want? That program is called Farming as a Business. It's called Farming as a Business because generally our people take farming as a way of life. You wake up, you pick up your hoe, you go into your field. So now what we are saying is that no, it's not just a way of life. Think, plan, and know what crop and how to grow it and where to sell it and all that. So this is really our flagship program, and it's made tremendous changes to the way people do what they do now. But what has been interesting, and this is where the synergies of different stakeholders come in, is that initially we held a meeting where we were explaining about this program and what we thought that everybody must contribute. A lot of the people that came to that meeting were saying, no, but we're not involved in agriculture. Why should we bother to be part of this? Down the line, because we started the program in 2006, today, government are supporting it by providing information such as the one JJ was giving us. So the policy side and the programs that government is carrying out. Then you have input providers participating in the program by explaining about the inputs that they deliver to the farmers and when they are delivered and how they should be used and all that. Then we have those that market crop, that buy crop. They use the same program to provide information about markets, when they take place, where, pricing, and everything. Then, of course, you have NGOs that also do all sorts of work coming into. So we have all these disparate groups. They are not working directly with each other, but through the radio, they are cooperating and providing very essential information to our peasant farmers. What we think we've done through the approach that we've taken, we haven't yet gotten all of them to begin to think together, but they all now know that whatever period of time they can reach the farmers with essential information. So what we think is at first the farmers are winning because they are getting the information that they need and they are improving on their farming methods, packaging, harvesting, selling. It can be better because they need more money. There's still too many what we call briefcase buyers that come in and shortchange the farmers. We also think that the government is winning because without its own effort, through the effort of the radio station, they are now able to provide the farmers whom they were not able to reach before with essential information on all their policies and all their programs and how they can help the farmers. We also think that the input providers and the marketing people have found a way, because previously it was impossible to reach disparate villages scattered all over the place. But that they are all able now to provide that information and everyone will listen at the same time. Please. So what I think obviously should happen is that there should be better and more collaboration. But what would I say then to the question? The first thing that I would advise is that they must talk to the people. All the planning is done centrally. No real understanding of what the farmers really want. I think that if all these institutions spoke to the farmers, they would understand what the farmers want. And in the answers they will get, they will have no choice but to cooperate. Because what the farmers need is a coordinated approach to help them better their lives. Thank you very much. Talk back when it's time to engage in discussion.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, from Zambia, somehow we get to Colombia. Later.
Hi, my name is Adelaida Trujillo. I'm from Colombia, South America, Columbus, Ohio. Sometimes something like that. I'm a TV producer and anthropologist, and then become a TV producer, documentarian, documentary filmmaker, and then very quickly 10 years of public TV work in foreign channels because our media environment did not allow that kind of story to be told, political violence, drugs, trafficking, etc. But our main goal was to get our stories across in the international media from a Colombian perspective. Then we moved, second part of our 10-year career was into having the media environment being more open to public service TV and outreach and education. We moved into multimedia campaigns with radio, TV, and print. And in the last 5 years, working for 25 years now, very much focused on children's and youth TV with multimedia and new technologies in the school system. So that's more or less like where we've worked. And I think at the bottom of all this, and that's why I started with the idea of representation in the international media about Colombia's perspective, is the fact that you have to be visible to exist. Visible in the sense of having voice, visible in the media or visible in the TV or radio, and that goes back to your idea of voice and participation. So I think from my perspective, when you're trying to bridge these three areas that are so complementary and that coexist in the family and normal, daily life environment, which is, how to feed your children and how do you educate them well and how do you actually get them jobs in the rural areas, etc. It's a very personal thing, so it's about good storytelling. From our experience, communication works if you're a good storyteller and you can simplify the message, which is what you were talking about. It's how do you actually use the language, as you were saying, Klaus, how to learn how to manage the languages according to the audiences. And good storytelling is either through fiction or good documentaries or good research in radio and good, use of resources. So I think that part of what happens with these sectors, which are very research-based, is how to transcend that more scientific language and really learn how to translate. So there are a lot of people working out there on how to translate scientific research data and language into a more layman language, and there's different levels. So I think understanding the levels of language the audience's needs is absolutely crucial. That's why we're focused on children and TV and children and youth TV in the last 5 years, because we found that those were the spaces, the real population where change could be made was youth and children. And the school system as a space for those stories to circulate if we wanted to change, to create social movements. So our work became from being one-off broadcasts, very successful 1 year research into Channel 4, BBC, etc. we went back home and started to work on the regional media, local media, using what we had learned from good storytelling in the BBC and the UK to adapt and train people to do the same kind of good storytelling but at their local level. And now with the new technologies, the small cameras, small recorders, you can really empower people with those media devices, if you're talking about media, and create those spaces in their local channels and languages. I think one of the reasons Warren invited me to speak is the multi-sectoral dialogues that need to be approached in these strategies. We've now moved into edutainment strategies. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term, which is education and entertainment. There's about 250 quite well systematized processes in the world that use entertainment for education, be it using puppetry or theater or video or radio, etc. And we've actually worked in Colombia very recently combining TV media outlets, taking advantage of a 98% penetration of the television, which is not the case for many countries, as I was listening to you. Radio, which is more or less 99%. ICTs, new technologies, which is about 12-13% in Colombia, and a lot of public oral theater puppetry tradition, oral basically. So we were trying to bridge these national, regional, rural sectors together in a project which talks about sexual reproductive rights and health of adolescents. So what it meant was that we had to put together ministries of education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture too, because we're talking about sexual reproductive rights in rural areas in a country which is also, very much affected by conflict still, with a lot of, conflict-generated violence. So there's that political aspect. We had to talk to the school system and also to the big media outlets. So that negotiation, I think, is something that I will refer to. Are you going to have another round of recommendations, or we should just say it now?
No, a couple of recommendations.
Okay. So these edutainment processes, which actually try to bring in the sectors that have to do with the themes, be it sexual reproductive health or nutrition or whatever, need to encompass, I think, need to be budgeted in a very intelligently designed dialogue and negotiation process before we go to, for example, the private sector partner. I think that's not happening in communication today. We actually have very short-term schedules. We don't have enough money for the planning, and we reinvent the wheel very much. So I absolutely take your point. We have to research more on what's been successful in other areas, see if it suits us, work with partners, and be very shrewd in using the language depending on what partner you're talking to. B, I would say the voice. When you were saying the voice of the community, if you're working with rural areas in complex countries, at least in Colombia, it's not as complex as some African or India countries, because the religion is not that, but we don't have that much complexity, but culture is absolutely crucial. So you have to have that cultural sensitivity, and you have to bring in the local actors that are actually dominating whatever the issue is. And the other thing, just quickly, I think the other recommendation is the use, taking advantage of how cheap and how generalized now is a new media, mobile technology, particularly in rural areas, and capacity building, I would say, as a permanent component of any communication process. There's got to be the building of capacity at the local and regional level so that actually people take over what you start. And in general, these creation of spaces where either TV, media, radio, theater, buses, video vans, public spaces, parks, plazas become the spaces for dialogue. And lastly, youth, school system and youth. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had a whole bunch of suggestions here, from policy platforms to sending key people away to places without food. Is that right, Ryan?
No food, yes.
Food, yes.
No electricity.
No electricity. Questions of voice and questions of resonance, the building of platforms. I'm sure you've made mental notes as you're going through, and I've been making some notes that we'll share with everyone. Can I ask, just at the end, do you mind if you collect business cards as people leave, and then we'll know who's in the group and we can communicate with you later?